Welcome to the Nerd Party.
In the cage is a bear. What's he doing in there? Locked inside, no room to play. On this lovely summer day. It's a bear. It's a bear. It's a bear. It's a bear. It's a bear.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party, the home for all your nerdy needs, whether it be Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, Babylon 5, Harry Potter, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or just general film fun. I'm your host Alice King, and I've been binging Stranger Things recently, so I feel the need to assemble my Scoops troupe for today's discussion. First up, it's the Dustin to my Steve the Hare Harrington. Lee Hutchison, how are you?
Yeah, good. I've only ever seen 2 episodes of Stranger Things, but I have been to the pop-up Stranger Things bar twice, so I feel like I can get that on some level. On another level, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Excellent. And completing the troupe is our Robin, the newcomer who leaves a lasting impression and soft serves up opinions on horror as well as they do ice cream. It's Kim Morrison. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. So, Lee, you're very much like Dustin because he's very much into he's always got his radio antenna up, trying to receive either communications from Russian or trying to speak to his Canadian girlfriend. So I believe you've intercepted some transmissions. So what have you got for us this week?
Yeah, I've got an interview from the Edinburgh Film Festival that we can kind of finally share. So I spoke with lead actress, BAFTA nominee, and the youngest award-winning winner for a Laurence Olivier Award for Matilda at age 11 years old, Eleanor Worthington-Cox, about her titular role in Gwen. So in a stark beauty of 19th century Snowdonia, a young girl, Gwen, tries desperately to hold her home together, struggling with her mother's mysterious illness, her father's absence, and a ruthless mining company encroaching on their land. A growing darkness begins to take grip of her and her home, and a suspicious local community turns on Gwen and her family. So this film was very popular at the Edinburgh Film Festival, getting a lot of great reaction, and it's finally out in cinemas on Friday. So hopefully you'll enjoy my interview with Eleanor Worthington-Cox as we go behind the scenes on the making of Gwen. How did you sort of get involved in Gwen? How did it come to you?
So in September of 2017, I remember getting the script through, and it was quite different to what you see on a screen now, but from the moment I read it, I was just completely taken in by it. I was so connected to Gwen's character, and I just read it like without blinking, without breathing, and I thought, oh my gosh, if I do anything, I have to do this film. I'm so invested. So I met Will, the writer-director, and we spoke twice. We had 2 meetings. We read through a couple of scenes, we chatted generally about it, and just kind of felt our way through. And then it all snowballed from there. We all just kind of came together and created what you see now.
Yeah. What's the audition process like for a film like this?
Gosh, I mean, I went into London to meet him at, I think it was Endor's Studios, Endor, who have actually helped us make Gwen. And we just kind of sat down and we spoke a lot about some of the more, the deeper scenes, and we actually read through the more dialogue-y scenes at the time, if you will. And they put me on tape, and we tried it a few different ways, and just it was basically what we were doing on set anyway, which was just really feeling our way through and trying to see what we could create out of Gwen's character.
When you sort of start creating a role like this together, how much creative input do you get into it? And is William someone that's like, oh yeah, that's a great idea? How do you collaborate together?
I mean, honestly, he was such an incredible director to work with, and because he was also the writer, it was even more fantastic that he was able to say, ignore that line, or let's change that, or let's make that into something that you feel more comfortable doing. So we both had huge amounts of creative freedom, and I felt completely trusted at all points to do what I thought was right. And that was almost 100% of the time exactly what Will wanted, which was incredibly lucky. But there were a few scenes where we were just able to kind of go wild and try out different stuff, and just basically create Gwen as we went along, which is hugely rewarding for an actor, being able to actually create the character as you want them to be and have that freedom. It's invaluable.
Yeah. What's it like for an actor to get something like this, where I think you're in nearly every single scene, you're the titular role in a movie like this? Is it one of those ones that's like, oh my God, this is what I've worked all my life for? Or is it like, okay, maybe a bit terrifying?
Do you know what? I just felt so incredibly lucky and grateful. And, you know, I've been so lucky to have incredible leading roles before, but to literally have my name as my character's name as the film, that is me, and to have that responsibility, you know, it was definitely overwhelming, but it was something that I just felt so grateful to have been trusted with, that there was no way that I could have kind of taken a step back and gone, oh, actually this is a bit too much for me to handle. You know, I was just so overjoyed when I was told I had the part, because the fact that Will was actually able to trust me with, you know, something that was 8 years in the making, I just couldn't be more grateful, really.
What was the sort of preparation process? You've been given the role, the film is ultimately. How do you get into sort of that mindset of days gone by, a different culture for women in society?
Gosh, yeah, I mean, it was such an incredible project to be a part of, and to get into that headspace of a young woman in the 1800s and to portray a story that actually you can kind of mirror with some aspects of today as well. You know, I was incredibly lucky to tell the story because it's actually quite relevant for now even. You know, it's set in the 1800s, but you can definitely say that, you know, at the heart of the story, it's an anti-capitalist, feminist, anti-patriarchal story where you've got, you know, these landowners who are, you know, trying to weigh down on these women, these strong women who are working their own farm by themselves. And you think, you know, they're fighting against a patriarchy. You've got anti-capitalist undertones. And so, you know, you kind of take what's happening around you and it channels through your work. So, you know, we ended up with something that we couldn't have possibly dreamed of when we began, and we're just so lucky that it turned out the way it was.
What was it like to shoot in that set?
So we filmed in Wales. We filmed actually in the area where Gwen's set, which was fantastic. We filmed around Bethesda, and you know, it was fantastic. We had local crew, and it was great because if I ever had a query about the accent, I could just go up to a crew member and say, you know, how would you say horse? You know, help me out. So it was fantastic to actually really find myself in the same world that Gwen would have been in. You know, that we weren't hundreds of miles away in a different place, you know, trying to, you know, pretend that that's where we were. We were literally on the side of a mountain in Snowdonia. We were in blizzards where, you know, Gwen would have been completely freezing in bed at night. We were actually in a field picking potatoes. You know, it really does immerse you into the story, actually being in the landscape that is essentially the lead role. You know, let alone Gwen being the title of the film. We were in the most beautiful locations that became such a massive part of the film.
It looks so great on screen and stuff. It's a fantastic advert for that neck of the woods. I was thinking, I've never been to Wales before, and I thought, is that it or is that somewhere else?
Gosh, yeah, it's an incredible place, and you know, we felt so welcomed by the people there because obviously we were staying in a tiny little village. In what I like to call Camp Gwen. We were all just in little log cabins and we were all very local, so it was incredible to just spend 6 or 7 weeks totally immersed into that world and to have the people around you that, you know, we were able to spend so much time with.
When you're sort of immersed in the sort of the culture like that, and you know, as you've seen, you're picking potatoes, etc., does the script even sort of evolve then when you're like, you know what, we've got something on paper here, the reality is this is hard work, you know, how about we change something?
Yeah, you know, we definitely changed bits as we went along, and there were definitely scenes that were more wordy, or you know, we had a lot more dialogue in, and we said, let's just strip this back. You know, we don't need to spoon feed an audience. We really worked on just being able to, well, from my part, being able to portray all the emotions that I would have been having to express anyway, but just without having to use words, which is hugely challenging for an actor who so heavily relies upon a script. But equally, it was the most rewarding and challenging thing I've ever done, because, you know, you never get opportunities like that.
Yeah.
You never get the writer-director telling you, ignore the script, just go ahead, like, do what you feel is best. And, you know, we were working with a 6-year-old who was playing my little sister, Jodie, who was honestly one of the sweetest kids I've ever worked with, ever met even. And it was brilliant because a lot of the stuff that we did with her was just total improvisation. You know, just picking her up, twirling around, playing clapping games, you know, plaiting her hair, tickling her in bed, you know, all sorts that just wasn't in the script. But, you know, because she's 6 years old and she'd never done anything professional before, you think, what an opportunity to actually get something truly real out of her. And from the rest of us through it.
Were you able to give her any sort of advice as a young age and stuff like that? You've had an amazing career to date. Was there a little thing you think, this can be my little nugget to you that you can take with your career?
Do you know what? She is one of the most wonderful kids, and every day there would be something new that she learned. And, you know, being able to say to her, so you look there and remember not to look at the camera, and, you know, just being able to teach somebody else all the stuff that, you know, somebody had once taught me. And, you know, I never really had, you know, a big sister, as it were, and, you know, anything that I'd done until I turned about 12 or 13, and I'd done a few projects by then. So I didn't really have somebody telling me, you know, where to stand or, you know, don't look at the lens directly. And she really benefited from it, I think, because we're so close now, and I'm close with their family. So, you know, it was just incredible to be able to pass on even the tiniest little bit of, you know, what I've learned to her.
Yeah. I loved the dynamic between you and your mum. I think it was Maxine Pete. Yes. How did sort of you guys work on that? Because I imagine it's a different relationship to build up with than a 6-year-old.
Of course, yeah. You know, Maxine is one of the most incredible people I've ever worked with. I was so lucky to have worked with her. I absolutely love her, and to have built that relationship where it was so complex, there's so many layers to our characters' relationship. You know, you've got that deep fear, but also that deep love, and you know, there's no trust, but there's a lot of trust too. And by the end of the film, you realise that it's not a mother who is, you know, really having it out for her child. All she's doing is trying to protect her. And so you have to try and build those layers into every scene, and it's this deep connection between the two of us that we built, and I couldn't have asked for anyone better to have done it with.
One of the things I was thinking about when watching this, obviously you previously played the main role in Matilda. I was thinking of the movie Hereditary, where sort of you and Millie Shapiro.
Oh my goodness.
I'd previously interviewed her, and you know, she'd come from a background where she was Matilda, and then ended up being sort of the movie poster star, almost the main role of something like Hereditary, this genre pick. And then I was watching your film, I was like, obviously there's the Matilda part, but then, you know, a young actress going on, kind of main role, all on the posters, trailers, it's all you. Gosh. What is it perhaps about Matilda for the lead actors that help them move into something like, you know, you can think of Matildas and you think sort of like Mara Wilson, very much staying in those roles.
Yeah.
What is it for maybe you two that have now kind of gone on to do similar follow-ups to Matilda?
You know what, I'm so glad you've mentioned Millie. You know, we've kind of been, you know, in touch over Instagram over the years, and obviously she was the Broadway Matilda, I was in the West End, and I think the thing that connects us, and you know, for all of the Matildas, is that it's such an unusually responsible role for such a young person, that, you know, within the industry you have people realizing that there is a young woman capable of being able to hold a show on her shoulders. And you know, I have so much respect for every single Matilda there's been. I think there's been something like 100 of us now or over, and you think all these young women who have had this huge responsibility, I think because of that, they've grown up quickly. You know, I have 2 older brothers as well, so it was like, you know, you grow up quick, and you have a lot of worldly knowledge by the time you reach 12, let alone 18. It was my 18th on Friday. So, you know, you have all this responsibility, and you're very used to having that. So by the time you get to, I don't know, Millie's place, or, you know, where I'm in Gwen, you're so used to having that trust put upon you that people know you're capable of pulling it off. So, you know, I have a lot of respect. I love that film.
It's so good.
Oh my God, she's fantastic. And, you know, there's other Matildas like Una Lawrence. She's done amazing stuff. All of them have been so successful. And I think it's because people know that they can be trusted with huge amounts of responsibility.
Definitely. And is it always going to be sort of theatre, cinema and TV that you're going to continue to blend? Or now that you've got of being the main star, is it kind of cinema that you're going to continue doing?
Do you know what? I cut my teeth in theatre, and it's been my passion since day one. And then recently it's been more film and TV based, but I guess there aren't as many theatre roles for people my age. You know, I've been very lucky with the theatre I've done, and I'm all about diversity. Yeah. I would love to be lucky enough to continue to do a huge variety of roles. You know, I've gone from playing a Disney princess to being, you know, a young woman in the 1800s being put through the ultimate hardship. And, you know, I never want to be pigeonholed. I always want to do a huge variety of things, and I guess that means being able to do all 3 genres and, you know, loving every minute of it. Definitely. If I'm lucky enough.
So what's next for the film? So obviously it had its premiere at Toronto, now it's here kind of in the UK. Where's sort of the film going to kind of go?
So I think we've got a few more festivals coming up, and, you know, we're just rolling with the punches really and just kind of seeing what happens. We've been so lucky so far, and we're all so incredibly grateful. You know, every time we go to a new festival, we're just so amazed to see how incredible the reaction's been. We've got so many people who've been really positive about the film, and, you know, especially something that's so harrowing, and it's such a strange subgenre of many different things. You can't place it in a certain bracket, so you wouldn't think that so many people would think it's their cup of tea. But we've been so hugely lucky, and we're just kind of seeing where it takes us next, really. Yeah.
And what about for yourself? Is there sort of things that kind of coming up in the pipeline that have got you excited?
Gosh, yeah. So this autumn, my series Britannia, it's series 2 coming out, so I'm hugely excited about that. We worked very hard on that all of last year. And there's a project that I'll be doing next year as well. Maybe something at the end of this year too, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Excellent. Well, I wish you all the very best for the festival. And thank you very much for talking with me. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for that, Lee. And it's now the summer holidays are upon us, and today we are reviewing 2 of the most anticipated films of the summer that on first glance may look worlds apart, but actually have more in common than you may think. Because Spider-Man Far From Home and Midsommar are both about a group of young Americans who visit Europe for their summer vacation and find out that appearances can be deceiving, people are not to be trusted, and they end up in rather dangerous situations. So first up, let's dive into the 22nd film of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the closing chapter of the Infinity Saga, Spider-Man Far From Home. Following on from the events of Avengers Endgame, Peter Parker is struggling with the aftermath of The Blip and the, spoilers, death of Tony Stark, the pressure of being a fully fledged Avenger post-Thanos, and his burgeoning feelings for MJ. So Marvel has reached this stage in the British TV series where you send them all on a holiday, and Peter and his friends, who all conveniently happen to be blipped at the same time, go off to Europe for a science trip, but every European vacation turns into a magical Mysterio tour when Nick Fury and a new hero Quentin Beck require his help to stop a mysterious force called the Elementals. So was everyone looking forward to this one? Lee, I'm going to come to you first. What were your first initial thoughts upon what were you looking forward to, and did it live up to your expectations?
My expectations were unusually mute because Homecoming for me is in the top 3 of the Marvel movies today. I absolutely loved it, and I was kind of glad that all the sort of team was coming back for this sequel. But despite the fact that Jake Gyllenhaal, I thought it had a really terrible ad campaign. Sort of every time I saw the trailers, I was like, I'm just not getting something from it. It wasn't exciting me that much. And I was kind of went in a bit more sort of hope than expectation from sort of what I'd seen. And I was kind of, I thought I watched it and I kind of was in a bit of a mood going in, which may have dented it a little bit. But I kind of went into the film and I thought it was fine. There was stuff I liked. I didn't like sort of the action plot of the movie. I thought some of the tropes with the villain were sort of retreads. I get really annoyed by the amounts of drones in films sort of used as a plot device. That was back in that again. I didn't really like the Elementals plot. And when I kind of got home, I sort of went, I'll log it as a 3 on Letterboxd before it sort of dropped down to sort of a 2.5, and it's kind of stayed there since. And it's a film where I like it a lot when it's sort of Peter Parker hanging out with Mary Jane and his pals. Like, I really like that a lot. But whenever it moved away from there, I just was really bored, and that's sort of criminal for me when it's got someone like Jake Gyllenhaal, who I love in this. I just find that whole side to be a huge disappointment. But when it's just a bunch of school kids hanging out on a European adventure, I'm all in. But it just wasn't good enough, and I'm a bit gutted about that.
Okay, Kim, what about you? What did you make of it on first viewing?
I was pretty excited about this one because, Spider-Man Homecoming I really liked it. I wasn't super keen on like a lot of the earlier kind of Spider-Man iterations, so I was quite excited at how much I liked Homecoming, so I was really excited for this one. But I had heard, I think it was the same really. I think like there was such a massive like ad campaign for the Avengers. I think like in comparison it kind of felt like I'd heard really nothing about this, and apart from reading a lot of things on Twitter where people were saying it wasn't like one of the best. I really enjoyed it. Like, I think what I like about the Spider-Man films is they just feel a lot more fun and a lot less like heavy. Like, Peter has had to deal with a lot of stuff, but it never feels like, oh my god, like some of the other ones, like Iron Man constantly having to deal with all those like personal issues. It never really feels like that. It's just quite fun and interesting. It's funny, the person I went to see it with were like, oh, if you didn't know like Mysterio's background in the comic books, that might have been more enjoyable. And I was like, well, I had no idea what his background in the comic books, so I didn't really know what was going to happen with the character, so I maybe enjoyed it a bit more on that level. I wasn't super keen on a lot of the stuff with like Nick Fury and stuff. A lot of those scenes just irritated me a little bit, but I did really enjoy Jake Gyllenhaal and the whole Elemental storyline. I thought it was nice to just have a sort of back to like, it felt like a film that just the focus was like on that story, and it wasn't like leading up to an Avengers film. It felt nice to sort of just be kind of focused in on a one story and one kind of plot line. And I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it 4 stars. I must have quite liked it. I thought it was fun and very funny, and just a bit of a chill out break after the heaviness of the Avengers films.
I think this Spider-Man feels very much for me. It felt like one of the Ant-Man films, because the Ant-Man ones have always followed the Avengers, and I think like you say, the stakes were so high in Endgame that they needed to go a bit lighter and a bit more fun with this one, just to sort of bring everyone back up again. And I mean, it was an interesting choice, I thought, at the very beginning of the film to start off with Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You. And I was like, okay. And I was like, because I thought it was potentially going to be sort of almost softening the emotional impact of Endgame. But then when it was revealed it was this sort of terrible sort of student home video sort of thing for the news network, where they, I thought, quite effectively managed to sort of sum up what's happened in the last 5 years with although there seems to be a bit of dispute on the internet at the moment about the blip versus the snap. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the snap was the first, it was Thanos' snap, and then the blip was the fact that everyone came back in the end. And yeah, it does go into a little bit about how that's affected everyone, but I think did you think that was well handled or would you like to have seen maybe a bit more about what's been going on in the 5 years since, when everyone's suddenly come back, and how Earth can actually deal with this mass influx of people again?
I'm sure there'll be something to, because I've always thought about that, where it's like, and I like that it addresses some of it, like people would end up going into these people's houses and living there and then coming back and finding squatters to an extent in their homes. And I liked how the film sort of seemed to address that. And I did think it was sort of, it focused in on that, but I think it rightly kind of got into sort of the bigger stuff with kind of Peter Parker and living in that post Tony Stark world. I did always expect it to happen. Found it incredibly convenient that entire class all poofed away at the same time, which was probably to be expected. But yeah, I thought it kind of balanced it quite well, but I realised sort of the main meat of that kind of blip in post-world was sort of the Spider-Man story.
I thought it was quite a good way of getting in like a couple extra characters in their class though, because they were like, oh, there's these people that were 5 years younger than us and now they're suddenly in the class with us. It was quite a good way. But I did wonder that when the Spider-Man trailer came out. I was like, how are they all still in high school though? But if they all went off, if they all like melted together, I guess, and then it all came back, it does make sense. But I'm happy that they got that out of the way instantly, so you just didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I know, and it like the guy said, it did seem very harsh that they had to retake their midterm straight away once they got back, because that's the last thing you'd really be wanting to do. You disappeared for 5 years, the entire basically the entire outlook on Earth has changed, and you're back having to do your exams, which you've already sat. So I don't know, maybe they could remember the answers, I don't know. But I mean, like you say, there is the other shadow sort of hanging over the film, and that's, even though he's died, the shadow of Tony Stark and his legacy sort of is still there, with Peter trying to step up and not essentially become the new Iron Man, but certainly become the hero that people are looking for. Do you think there was maybe too much of that, or do you think it needed to be addressed in this film?
Yeah, I think it got a bit much, to be honest. See, when basically there was a whole thing in the Avengers for ages about this suit of armor around the world, which essentially they kind of have built with these satellites with drones in space that can descend, in seconds on Earth and start like shooting and blowing up shit. And it was like, I thought they had like a whole discussion about how they should have that, then they didn't have it, and now they do have it sort of in this post Tony Stark world. And it's like, I'm trying to work out when in the timeline that was created, because surely they would have used it sort of when Thanos invaded. So I found it kind of quite frustrating, that elements of it, that I didn't kind of work out how some of this stuff existed in Tony Stark's timeline, and it just became a little too excessive, some of it, even things like the glasses, for example. It just felt a bit much. Like I couldn't work out how it all kind of clicked in together at that sort of timeline. So yeah, that was a bit frustrating for me.
Yeah, I feel like obviously because Spider-Man has such a deep connection to Tony Stark that like both of his films are maybe a little bit Tony heavy. Like Iron Man was never like my favorite Avenger, so just having him like there all the time getting mentioned was a little bit annoying. Though I did appreciate the fact that they kind of again showed that he was a bit of a douchebag, and he kind of was quite happy to like screw people over even if he was an Avenger. So that was quite enjoyable. But yeah, I know it was a lot of killer robots coming for people, when that was kind of what they tried to avoid in another film. I guess they tried to tie it back to like previous bits. They kind of showed you clips from other films and kind of showed how it tied in little bits to the timeline. But yeah, like overall it didn't really explain it. It was just sort of a way of having Iron Man get to be responsible for the villain and also for getting Spider-Man hopefully free from his shadow now, and now Spider-Man films won't talk about Tony as much.
I think you were right as well, Kim, that like it did feel like too much kind of Iron Man, and especially perhaps for folk that aren't a bit indifferent to him. It almost reminded me sort of Poochie from The Simpsons. Like when he's not on screen, people should be asking, "Where's Poochie?" And like everyone should be talking about it. And it felt like, we get it that Tony Stark's died and there's like moving on, but it just felt like hammered into everything, and it just became a bit tiresome. And what makes Spider-Man so unique is that sort of friendly neighborhood guy, but when he's controlling drones and he's designing sort of cybernetic uniforms and stuff, it just becomes like, oh, that's kind of losing a bit of the sort of who Spider-Man is.
Yeah, it's like, I think was it Nick Fury summed it up when he sort of says, "Bitch, please, you've been to space," when he tries to say, "I'm just a neighborhood Spider-Man." So yeah, it's like, I mean, I actually feel sort of talking about it now and watching the film that they've almost managed, they made such a deal about the fact that we're not doing the Uncle Ben storyline again. but they kind of almost have done it here, but with Tony Stark, because, I mean, they're putting Peter Parker through the ringer here. He's lost his dad, he's lost his uncle, he's now lost another father figure in Tony Stark, and then, there's another paternal figure which he sort of gets in this film, and then, loses again. So it's like they've managed to do that. He's trying to, with the glasses and everything, he's trying to teach him responsibility and stuff like that, and, with great hard work comes great responsibility. So they've kind of done it there, but I think hopefully, yeah, I think certainly with how they've teed it up at the very, very end, which we'll get onto in a bit, I think, yeah, we're going to see it certainly move away from the shadow of Tony Stark and into the real sort of Peter Parker can be sort of set off the leash and really do his own thing. But I mean, one of the big things we need to talk about is, I guess, the character of Mysterio, who, like I say, in the trailers was set up as a potential new hero and good guy and ally for Spider-Man. So I think, Lee, let's come to you, because how familiar were you with the character of Mysterio going into this film?
Yeah, I've never been a sort of big comic book reader. Like, I was always more sort of a Batman reader. So kind of a lot of this stuff that pops up in Marvel movies, whether it's sort of the Infinity Gauntlet or Mysterio, are kind of things that I know the iconography of, but I don't know sort of the full story behind it. I did always sort of feel that, yeah, he's portrayed as this really good guy, but of course he's going to be the bad guy. It's like they're not just going to have it as this sort of elemental character. So, I felt not knowing didn't really make much of a difference here. I think it was so kind of clear it was always going to go that way.
Kim, you said that you were quite surprised with the twist sort of in the sort of halfway through.
I mean, I feel like going in, I had heard that, like, in the comics and stuff, he is a villain, so I sort of had that in my head. And I think as well, before I went to see the film, I really had no idea about the whole elemental thing. Like, I didn't really twig like who the actual, like, villain was presented to be. So when it kind of got to halfway through and they defeated, inverted commas there, the final elemental, I was like, right, something's clearly gonna happen. So I kind of knew that he was gonna turn bad, but I didn't really know about the whole like projecting images and stuff and manipulating people. I was quite like, oh, okay, that's quite cool. So yeah, I kind of sensed it was coming. He was going to turn into a bit of a bad guy, but I wasn't exactly sure how it was going to happen. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a huge Mysterio fan, and I will go to bat for him in this film. I know a lot of people are not really fans of his portrayal in terms of villain stakes, but I mean, I'm currently wearing a Spider-Man shirt, which I've had for about 20 years, and it's got Mysterio and Spider-Man on it. So, of course, it doesn't really work for a podcast, but never mind. I'm going to say it anyway. But, I mean, I've actually got the original appearance of him in Amazing Spider-Man 13 as well. And in the comics, he's originally like a magician who uses, his tricks and illusions in order to commit sort of small crimes, but it's then sort of upended by Spider-Man and then sort of wants to get revenge on him. So that's his sort of story in the comics. And if Sam Raimi had made Spider-Man 4, the rumor was that Bruce Campbell was going to play Mysterio in a small role in that, which I would have loved to have seen. But I think what they've done with the character for this one and finding a way of making the character relevant in the MCU context was really good, with with the tech and his links to sort of Tony Stark and how he can use that to create effective, believable illusions, and also sort of going towards the end of the film with a sort of fake news angle. And he is right, because I mean, if you look at the character's costume, it's essentially a mixture of Thor, and then he's got these sort of green triangle things which are very sort of Doctor Strange. So he's basically taken everything which people like about the Avengers and has created a new hero for them to admire. And then, of course, he uses it for his own nefarious gains. And of course, with these films, it never turns out exactly the way he wants it, and then sort of turns on everything. So, I mean, I really liked the twist. I mean, I knew it was going to be coming. I mean, there was that slight glimmer of hope that maybe it's true when he sort of started talking about the multiverse. That got people in a tiz on the internet beforehand, because we just had Spider-Man into the multiverse, and it was like, wow, they're actually going to go down that route. But of course, Mysterio was lying the whole time, and it's all utter horseshit. But people will believe what they want to believe. They're in an era where Tony Stark is dead. They need a new hero to look up to, because Thor's off world, and all the other Avengers are conveniently busy during any of the Ant-Man or Spider-Man films, when you'd think they'd come to help, but no, they're always conveniently maybe on holiday or whatever. So I particularly like I like Mysterio's portrayal, and I like Jake Gyllenhaal's performance, especially when he sort of goes, as I dub it, full Okja at times, and just goes, swinging for the fences in terms of some of his acting decisions. But I thought it worked for the role. What did you guys think of his performance in particular?
Yeah, I did enjoy it. I kind of had heard the Okja comparisons being made, and I love Okja. I should give that even more context, that when I log into my Netflix, the emoticon that I have for my profile on Netflix is Jake Gyllenhaal from Okja. So I don't think you can get that option anymore, but it's still kind of holding strong on mine. And I just wanted him to be a little bit more kind of crazy. That I like the sort of first half, like I was really on board with Jake Gyllenhaal's performance, but then in the sort of the second half, they have him sort of kicking around a lot all by himself, where he's basically playing with like a Game Boy Switch or something like that, and controlling the drones and sort of doing little monologues to himself. Whereas I thought his strength as a kind of character and performer was when he was bouncing off sort of Peter Parker, and I thought they had a really good chemistry at that point. But then it sort of all became a bit undone, which was a bit disappointing. It was like, you've got this amazing actor and you've just got him basically hanging around on the top of Tower Bridge playing computer games. It was really disappointing.
Yeah, I thought it was quite impressive how he manages to pull off like super charming, like you think his whole family's been murdered kind of person at the beginning, and then I really hated him by the end. Like I really disliked him. He was so irritating. But I think it's right, like I would have liked to have seen some actual more fights between him and Spider-Man. There were a lot of cool sequences at the end with Spider-Man fighting all the stuff with the drones, and especially the stuff where like his spider sense was really cool. But I would have like, if I know his costume and that wasn't real and it didn't work like that, but I would have liked to have seen them having like big like spider web green thing fights in the middle of London. That would have been cool. So yeah, it was a bit weird, but I did enjoy his performance. I think it's cool how Jake Gyllenhaal can play this total like charming person, and then by the end of the film you're quite happy to see him die. So yeah, no, I did enjoy it from that point of view. But yeah, they could have had a better face off at the end. It would have been a bit more interesting.
What did you guys think of Mysterio's demonstration of his powers in that? I thought it was just one of the sort of best sequences in the MCU recently. The bit when Spider-Man goes to Berlin and he gets sort of sucked into this visual vortex of all these sort of crazy visions, including zombie Tony Starks, and you think he's come out of it and he's talking to Nick Fury, and then it turns out he's not, and again and again and again, it sort of wrong foots you the whole time. What did you guys think of that sequence?
I did find it to... I don't know what... I don't think it's fair to compare it to, but it did almost remind me a bit of Batman Forever, to be honest. Where maybe it's just because I rewatched it recently. I thought it was like sort of full-on Riddler when he had that machine that he put on his head and people could sort of see visions and flashbacks, etc. Like I did enjoy sort of the idea of it, but I did find the sort of the effects to be a little too CGI. It looked like I was watching kind of Spider-Man in a game, and yeah, it kind of took away sort of the intensity for me.
It's funny because it reminded me of the bit in X-Men Apocalypse where like they're fighting inside Xavier's head and the baddie gets absolutely massive and like squishes it. It reminded me of that, but I thought like slightly better done. I think you're right though. I think I really enjoyed it. I thought it was cool, like the bits of glass and all the different Spider-Men, but I was just very aware that I was looking at something that was like computer generated and it just looked a bit weird. I don't know, I just wanted it to look a bit more dreamy or something. It just looked very fake, and that maybe took you out of it a little bit more. I did think it was a cool concept though, and I did like the whole like double bluff at the end where he did that a couple of times where you kind of thought it was over and then he got pulled back in. I thought it was cool as a concept, but to look at it was a bit I don't know, I was just very aware that I was looking at something that wasn't real.
Yeah, I've actually, when you were talking about X-Men Apocalypse there, I'd completely forgotten that sequence existed, and probably actually that film existed. But it did remind me that Mysterio was actually responsible for the death of all the X-Men in the Old Man Logan comics. He basically managed to trick Wolverine into killing all the other X-Men. And it's kind of referred to in Logan with Hugh Jackman's one, but in that one I think it was basically Patrick Stewart's Charles Xavier goes mad and ends up killing them all with a psychic burst. But in the comics, it was Mysterio who was responsible. So, he might seem a bit silly with a goldfish bowl in his head, but he can actually, be an effective villain from time to time. And that sort of brings me on to the end of the film. We're going to get into real sort of spoiler territory, but it's been a couple of weeks since the film's come out, and it's all over the internet now anyway, so you can't really avoid it. And Mysterio almost becomes one of the first villains to truly defeat Spider-Man. He manages to do something which no one has done on screen yet anyway, and that's he reveals Peter Parker's true identity to the world via a familiar face. This was something that I was just hoping would happen, but when it happened, I sort of screamed in the cinema. I was so happy that it happened. What did you guys make of the return of, J. Jonah Jameson, but also J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson? Kim, what did you think?
I mean, I think I've only seen Spider-Man 1 and 2, so I don't know, I just remember him really, it's not his fault as an actor, just the character really annoyed me in the other films, so I was like, great. Plus, I'm not a big fan of the whole, portraying superheroes having to defend themselves because everyone thinks they're a bad guy, and I think if that's the way the next film goes, it'll be a bit annoying. It's a very Batman approach to stuff that just annoys me. I just want them to be happy and everyone to love them all the time. So, I was like, oh, cool, it's that guy again. But I just remember him annoying me a bit, so I'm maybe not the best person to ask about it.
I'm gutted that you haven't seen the third one, Kim. Of all people, you're missing out on emo Spider-Man, which I know you would love. This just doesn't compete. Even does dancing and stuff that you would like too. You need to address this.
I've seen so many clips of it. I don't know why I haven't seen, because I definitely went to see the first two in the cinema. I remember distinctly the first one's closing song over the credits being Dashboard Confessionals Vindicated, so I definitely went to see them in the cinema, and I don't know, by the time the third one came out, maybe I just lost interest, but I've just never seen it, so I probably need to rectify that.
Lisa, were you happy
for me
to see the return?
Yeah, I didn't expect it to ever happen, and when it popped up, I really enjoyed it, to be honest, and I like that they've taken this Jameson and they've put him in sort of the kind of Alex Jones sort of version, sort of they turn the Daily Bugle into sort of this, what's it called, his show and stuff, that whatever he does it and stuff. I like how they've brought it basically the Alex Jones version to the Spider-Man universe. I'm the same as Kim. I find it a bit of a tiresome trope. It will be something that will be resolved within 15 minutes, no doubt, in the film. There'll be some cop out and Spider-Man will live kind of happily ever after. I think it'll be interesting to see him sort of unmasked, but that's kind of about it. I think the concept is really cool, but I don't have much hope for their execution in the next one.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's always been this huge thing about Spider-Man's secret identity, and in the original Civil War comics, it was Tony Stark that persuaded him to unmask and go public in order to get people on their side as part of the Accord and stuff like that. But I guess within the MCU, apart from Spider-Man, everyone has actually has already gone public with their identity. Everyone knows who everyone is. Tony Stark at the end of the first one famously says, "I am Iron Man." Everyone seemed to know who Steve Rogers was, Captain America and stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works. But I think on the podcast group chat, I think I pitched, I would love to see Spider-Man 3 essentially be John Wick 3, where J. Jonah Jameson puts forward a bounty on Peter Parker's head, and then you get the likes of the Vulture, Scorpion, Kraven the Hunter, and whatever all descend on New York to try and capture and kill Spider-Man. I think that would be an interesting way to go, and I think they need to do a more sort of tiny, contained story for Spider-Man 3 in order to sort of set it apart from what's been done before. But in terms of
Wasn't that
No, no, what were you
basically?
saying?
Oh, sorry. Was that not kind of like I've only ever watched it once? It was like sort of the Amazing Spider-Man 2, where they had like all the villains sort of descend to try and kick his butt. Like, I don't know if that one necessarily worked, but I think they could maybe pull it off.
I think it's a chance to, finally actually effectively build towards the Sinister Six and bring in some of the other characters and stuff like that, which would be great to see. But in terms of like the MCU going forward, there was another game changer at the very end in the second post-credit sting, where it turns out that Nick Fury and Maria Hill were actually Talos and his wife, the Skrulls, and they'd been them the whole entire time for at least this film. Who knows for how long? This is potentially sort of setting up sort of the Secret War, Secret Invasion storyline. What did you guys make of that, and where do you think the MCU might go forward from now on?
Yeah, I thought it was a nice enough sort of kicker and a little smile, and it kind of, I suppose it's going to be interesting to see if they've done it with this in mind for quite a while, or this is sort of we'll insert this kind of plot here, and like actually it's just sort of it muddies the water a little bit of sort of Fury and Hill in this kind of timeline. I thought it was an interesting idea. I'm more interested in sort of the reasoning behind it and how long they've actually had this in the pipeline.
Yeah, I was just a bit confused by it. The entire cinema cleared out. Like, people still don't know if you go to a Marvel film. Just go and just wait till the end. So many people left, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And then people left after the mid-credits one. And I was like, "Are you honestly?" But when I was felt that I waited all that way at the end, and then I was a bit like, "Oh, okay." I don't really, like you say, I don't really feel like it. It didn't super add anything to the film, and I also don't feel for me it added anything to get me excited about the next ones. I was just a bit like, oh, that maybe explains why Fury was a bit of a douchebag quite frequently throughout this film to Peter, because it wasn't really him, and then that was it really. So I'm not sure. I guess we'll see how it goes, but I was just a bit like, okay, I liked the middle one better. That probably should have been the end one to make it worth waiting for.
I'm interested to see where they go, and like you say, Lee, how long they've been planning this, because certainly when Captain Marvel came out, everyone assumed the Skrulls were the bad guys, and that because they could shapeshift, it was going to lead into that storyline where they've got people everywhere, and even some of the superheroes are not who they claim to be. They were actually Skrulls the entire time. So it's going to be interesting to see where that goes forward, because apparently there's a line in Captain Marvel where Nick Fury says he can't cut his toast diagonally. And apparently in Age of Ultron, Samuel Jackson cuts his toast diagonally, which someone leads to believe that apparently Talos has been Nick Fury ever since the Age of Ultron or before, which is a bit of a reach perhaps, but I guess we'll have to see where they go with that. But I was just kind of pleased to see Ben Mendelsohn back, because I thought he was fantastic in Captain Marvel, and the fact he plays this Skrull with an Australian accent is just fantastic for me. So I'm intrigued to see where they go with that one. And I think Lee, you said on like the podcast group chat as well that you're kind of glad that there's going to be a bit of an extended break now. I think we've got about a year before there's anything sort of coming out, and actually we don't really know much about the next sort of stage. I think that's probably going to get announced this week at Comic-Con, probably like tomorrow, after we've recorded the podcast, as always happens. So I guess we'll have to wait and see, but I'm sure, I mean, they haven't made a bad film yet. They've made a few sort of underwhelming films like Thor: The Dark World and stuff like that. But I'm sure they'll continue on with their success rate anyway.
Yeah, a nice break is needed. Sort of, it's been an intense sort of year and a half, or dare I say 10 years, and I think sort of maybe even a year out just kind of recharges it for everyone and makes it sort of hopefully we'll continue to make it a sort of special event when these films come out.
Yeah, no, and speaking of streaks, we're sort of moving on to our second film, and this is the second film from Hereditary writer-director Ari Aster, and that is Midsommar, starring Florence Pugh, Jack Rayner, Will Poulter, and William Jackson Harper. It follows the character of Dani, a girl who suffers a devastating loss and decides to join her slightly unsympathetic boyfriend and his friends as they go on a PhD research trip to Sweden for an ancient festival which takes place only once every 90 years. So, Kim, we'll come to you first. Were you looking forward to Midsommar, and what were your initial thoughts?
I was sort of conflicted a little bit because I really looked forward to Hereditary when it came out, and I sort of left the cinema afterwards being a bit like confused, I guess is probably the best word. So I was a bit worried when it looked very good from the trailers and everyone was talking about it. I follow a lot of horror people on Twitter. Twitter was just insane with people talking about this film. So I was like, right, I'm excited. It's going to be good. And yeah, I really liked it. I came out of it feeling like I understood everything that happened, whereas in Hereditary I definitely didn't. And I feel like the ending's quite like empowering and uplifting. I came out feeling quite happy, and I went with a friend who was like, they were like, is that what you were expecting? And I was like, have you seen Hereditary? And they were like, no. I was like, yes, that was what I was expecting. It was absolutely batshit crazy, and I really enjoyed it. I really liked it.
Yeah, this was probably one of my most anticipated films this year. I've been excited. So I think this was announced almost immediately after sort of Hereditary came out, and then when the casting came through, like Florence Pugh, Jack Rayner, I was immediately sort of on board. And then I think it's one of these ones that we've discussed it kind of time and again, sort of on our other podcast, the A24 project, that A24 are just the masters of marketing these things. And I live in sort of a small quiet street, and at the end of my street there are two shops on either side of the road, and both of them outside have huge Midsommar posters kicking out next to them, next to one for like Yazoo milkshake, and on the other side it's like Midsommar and Toy Story. Like, this film has had a relentless ad campaign for America and also for here as well. Like, for weeks, like digital posters were everywhere. I watched Love Island, and it's like I said it before, like I'd love to know the Venn diagram of Love Island viewers to sort of Midsommar people that are going to go see it. And it's in between Superdrug adverts and Durex adverts, there has like been Midsommar adverts. So I've been like hype. And I was worried, could I be disappointed? And I don't think that's been the case at all. I really like this movie a lot. For a movie that's 2 hours, 27 minutes, I didn't feel it once at all. The only thing I'm sort of really grappling with is, I think there is like, I agree, sort of it has an uplifting ending, but I think there's a debate and discussion to be had about the ending, and I'm really curious to hear your guys' thoughts, because an element of it has left me uneasy, but I think otherwise I think it's fantastic. It was just, I want to see an art booklet for this film to see how it sort of was put together, the production design, the illustrations. I think it's a beautiful film that's going to be even more improved on sort of Blu-ray. But I think whereas Hereditary, whether you liked it or loved it, the third act kind of throws everyone for a loop, and this film goes where you expect it to go. And I don't necessarily think if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a thing that makes complete sense, and it sticks to sort of a nice narrative in this one, and I thought it paid off well.
Yeah, no, I think I was, really looking forward to this one as well. Hereditary was one of my favourite films of last year, and I actually read a tweet today which sort of throws everything you think about the movie into a loop, where it's like someone had said that my boyfriend told me that it was called Hereditary because her head hit a tree. Hereditary. And I was like, once you hear that, you go, oh my god, I can't think of the film the same way again. And it's like, yeah, no, it totally works. And so, yeah, really
actually, it hits an electric post.
I don't know. Well, that ruins the joke.
I suppose it was made of trees, so I think that'll be...
Exactly, yeah. It was a tree that was, turned into a post. But yeah, just ruined the joke. Oh, terrible. But, I was really looking forward to this. I went in probably slightly expecting a different film to what I got. I think from all the talk of like Jordan Peele saying, there was horrendous imagery that will never leave his mind and stuff, I thought there was maybe going to be more on the sort of gore and sort of visceral horror angle, whereas it turned out to be more of a sort of film that sort of slowly built the tension going through. And, there were some rather shocking moments, but it wasn't the sort of dread-filled gore fest that I was maybe expecting. It was more of it actually turned out to be more of a black comedy in places as well. I mean, I think it's been built as a horror based on Hereditary and all this sort of talk of it being compared to The Wicker Man and stuff like that. But I think there is a lot more going on, and someone basically said, it's like the best breakup movie ever. And yeah, I guess when we get to the ending, we can sort of discuss that, because people have said, I think I can understand why they'd be put it on adverts for Love Island, because people are saying, "Oh, don't do that, man. She's going to midsummer your ass" and stuff like that. So it's already sort of taking that. But I mean, I thought that Florence Pugh was just exceptional in this film. She's one of the best sort of young actresses out there, from sort of Lady Macbeth, and then even sort of Fighting with My Family. I thought she was great in that as well. So she was fantastic, and you sort of with her the entire way, and you can see why she does certain things that she does. But I mean, The Wicker Man was this huge sort of shadow over the film. Did you sort of? I mean, did you get the sort of Wicker Man vibes? I mean, it's an interesting film to watch, because you've got the sort of suspense versus tension sort of thing. Hitchcock was a master of suspense, and it's all about where the audience knows more than the characters, and then you've got tension, which is sort of like, say, like The Thing, where the audience and the characters are on the same playing fields. Nobody knows who the Thing is, so when you find out who the Thing is, it's quite a shock, and it's like it sort of falls between these two sort of things, because if you've watched any sort of horror film like this, where a group of Americans go somewhere where they shouldn't really be going, it's not going to end well, but you don't know how. So how did you feel the sort of tension was built, and did you think it effectively paid off?
Yeah, I think, as I said, that I think it paid off where it was always sort of going to go. Like, The Wicker Man is in my top 10 films of all time. And sort of the connotations between The Wicker Man were immediately obvious in the trailers alone, and I think that carried through into this film. I kind of liked that I'm no horror expert. Like, the amount of horror films I've watched is pretty limited in the grand scheme of things, but I did think it went where it should have gone. It made complete narrative sense. It made it was logical to watch, and it was the same as sort of when you watch The Wicker Man itself, that as soon as that guy steps onto the island, he's doomed. Like, he is going to burn, and that builds a tension in it where you're like, these guys are fucked. And I think that the same kind of happens here. Like, as soon as they agree to go to Sweden, that's their fate is sealed. It's just, how are they going to die? What is going to be their fate? And that tension really builds in, where sort of something like Hereditary throws things for a loop, and like there's some real genuine shock and horror, which I think maybe trumps Midsommar. With Midsommar, there's that tension that's building the whole time, where you're like, what is going to happen to this guy? What is going to happen to this woman? Where are they going to go? Are they going to escape? Well, of course they're not, but what's going to happen? Whereas sort of those shocking moments in Hereditary were pretty amazing and awesome, awestruck. Like, they both shock in different ways, and I did like that. I liked when you spend 2.5 hours and you're still invested in these people's fates, even though you know and you've made peace with early on that they're all going to die.
Yeah, I think I read a thing by the director who said, this is it's like a cult film, basically. These people are going to get sacrificed at the end. It's more about like the journey than the ending, and I think that's true. Like, in a world where Wicker Man exists as a film, you're pretty sure that there's going to be some like mass sacrifice with this cult at the end. So yeah, you're right. It was sort of the kind of build up to what was going to happen that made it scary. But I think it's the whole thing of like the group, the like commune people. They're not really like portrayed as villains. It's more like, this is their custom and this is how they work, and these people have come in as outsiders and they don't really understand it, but they're just like going to be part of it. It's not as bad as like the Hills Have Eyes family, like luring people to their death so they can eat them and stuff. It feels very much like this is just their life and this is how they get on with stuff, and it's just ended up that these people have been mixed up in it. So I never like, it was scary and there was that like level of tension and stuff, but I never really saw any of the kind of group as villains. Like, I hated her boyfriend. I wanted him to die so badly. I didn't really hate any people in the like cult groups. They were fine. Like, they were just getting on with their life. So I think that was quite impressive, to have this group of people that you knew were going to probably kill all these people that you were that you were supposed to be on their side and not really seeing them as the bad guys. It was more her boyfriend and his mates that I thought were the bad guys. So I think that was quite cool as well.
Yeah, no, it's sort of when they sort of first arrive and you've got the sort of the womanizing one and the sort of ones who are taking advantage of their hospitality and culture and stuff. You think it's like what happens every summer when, you know, people go abroad to like Mallorca and Greece and stuff like that and sort of just get absolutely pissed and sort of disrespect the locals and stuff like that. And you can say, yeah, I could see why they would do it. But what I thought was really good about the film was, especially when it sort of leads up to the first sort of moment of shock and horror when the sort of two old people leap to their deaths as part of this ritual. And it's like the character of Josh, who's played by William Jackson Harper, who plays Chidi in The Good Place, which throws a completely different viewing experience of the film if you've watched A Good Place and you just realize that this is just Chidi in The Bad Place the entire time. And there's so many memes and gifs on Twitter that can relate to this film as well. And it's like he knows before it's going to happen what's going to happen, because he sort of says, "Is this?" He realizes what's going to happen, but he stays. I know what happens, but what's good about it is the fact that at that point, every single one of those people should have been right. That's it. Thank you. We've had a lovely time. We're going to get in the truck and we're going to drive off. But they don't. They actually stay, and the reasoning behind why certain of the groups stay makes sense, narrative sense, because the audience should be screaming, "Get the fuck out of here! You're all going to die!" But they actually stay, and it's actually to the further the plot and stuff like that, where he wants to stay because he's wanting to do this PhD on this group of people and stuff like that. So I thought that was an effective way of keeping them there within the story. And I mean, in terms of the inevitability of the end, I mean, I spent a lot of time just looking at the walls of the barn, because there's all these beautiful drawings. Well, I say beautiful drawings, quite disturbing drawings, but beautifully rendered, which basically spell out the plot of what's going to happen to certain characters. And even like the very first image we see in the film is like this sort of tapestry of these two people, and it gives away the entire plot of the film, you know, within the first 30 seconds. You know, it's like you say, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey of what these people go on. And certainly with Danny's sort of struggle, we know she's lost her parents and she's lost her sister. You know, his sister basically committed suicide and killed her parents at the same time. She's got this boyfriend who's not really into the relationship and is sort of manipulating her and stuff like that. And he wants to break up with her, but he doesn't know how because he feels sad for her at the moment. And it's about her working, you know, it's like I say, it's just the best breakup movie ever. It's about how she gets her ultimate revenge on this douchebag who's wronged her. And I guess we could get into the end if people are we all happy to discuss the ending of the film now? Yeah. Okay. In the end, she wins the dancing contest to become the May Queen. Again, if you've watched The Wicker Man, that should set alarm bells ringing anyway. And she's given the choice of sacrificing either a Swedish person or her ex-boyfriend at this point, because she's caught him taking part in a very odd ritualistic sexual practice, and she basically loses it at that point to sort of Texas Chainsaw Massacre levels of just wailing and bawling. You know, it reminded me of this scene where they're all sat around the table. She's sort of tied up and like the whole family are sort of screaming at her, and she basically, that woman is gone for the rest of her life. And it looks like that's the sort of point where Danny finally snaps. But I've heard that Ari Aster and Florence Pugh have differing viewpoints on the ending and whether or not she makes an active choice to have Jack Rayner sewn into a bear costume and burnt alive, which just brings back more Wicker Man memories, but of the Nicolas Cage version where he's dressed in a bear costume punching women and stuff like that. So Kim, do you think she chose Jack, or do you think she'd lost it completely and couldn't make a choice?
I actually read that interview between them as well, where the director was like, yeah, there's no version that I wrote where she didn't know what she was doing, whereas the actress was kind of like, yeah, I think she'd spaced out. I think, I mean, it never shows you her making the choice, and some people had said, well, maybe like she didn't, maybe someone made it for her or whatever. But I think she totally made the decision. I think she has, you know, she's got no family. all the people who were like friendly with her or pretending to be friendly with her boyfriend's friends are all dead. She spends the entire film, you see her like she's constantly like bursting into tears and stuff, and she just holds it in. She just like can't let it out. And that like group like grief session that she has with the other women, it just looks like so cathartic. Like she just needs to get all of this out of her body and just like rids herself of it. And I think he's like the last tie to that old horrible life that she has left, and you know they all say to her like, this is family now, like welcome home. I entirely think that she made that decision to get rid of him, to just like complete the ritual and the circle and just like close off her old life and just have, I mean, I don't know what state she's going to be in. It's hard to tell because she drank a lot of stuff that had drugs in it, so maybe she'll be fine when she goes around. But yeah, just potentially like start this new life over there with people who are welcomed her in. Like he is just, you see her kind of getting a bit braver with saying stuff to him. There's like a couple who disappear and they think that the boyfriend's like abandoned the girlfriend, and she's like, I can see you doing that to me. Whereas before she was always trying to make him happy and make sure he still loved her and things because she thought she needed him. But I think being there in that place, she kind of realizes that she doesn't need him as much as she thinks she does. And I do think she would just be like, right, I just want rid of everything that ties me to that old life, and if that means burning him in a bear costume, then that's what you got to do.
For me, I'm 100% spot on with what you've said and stuff, and I can get the logic. I think there's talk that there's going to be this director's cut with an extra 30 minutes of footage, which I think will certainly maybe help with the decision. I think one thing that I found has been slightly odd in sort of many of the think pieces and talks about sort of that ending is sort of, you know, Jack Rayner's character of Christian is a real son of a bitch. Like, he is an absolutely terrible boyfriend and she needs to get rid of him. But I think also in the film that he is also, you know, how much so I'm not too sure, but like in that last whole stretch, like as soon as he started down for sort of that last dinner where he, like, all of them have got the orange juice, but he's got this sort of blood red drink, that guy has been drugged in terms of his food. There's like pubes in it, God knows what else. There's been something put into his drink as well.
It's menstrual blood.
He's clearly been drugged. Like, he looks like he is someone that gets easily led. He's clearly under the influence of something. Whether he would have followed through with what he did, that sexual act, I don't believe so. Like, I believe he's someone that has a wandering eye and is a real asshole, but I get the impression, and I want to give him sort of the benefit of the doubt based on the fact that he has been drugged, that he has been spiked, spiked to like probably the most absolute extreme, that he's sort of taken into this sort of sexual exploit where you sort of look at his eyes and they look so glazed. This is someone that doesn't even know where he's going. Like, at points his body is even sort of thrusted by like hands on the ass and pushed in. Like, and I think that there's like a big misunderstanding of what's gone on, that Danny has seen this and has come to the conclusion that nearly all of us would, seeing that, and I think she's almost deprived of the context that Christian has been led largely through this film, whether through drugs and manipulation, to carrying out this act, that he is as much a role in this, sort of helping this society continue with flesh, blood and semen into sort of its things, and that when he gets burned, like, the concept of why he has been burned is so fair. Like, as Kim said, like, it gets rid of his previous life. He is an absolute dickhead, but I consider him also, that I think he's also a victim in this, that this is someone that has been, I think, I don't know if he has been raped. He has been heavily drugged and abused and manipulated into committing an act that I don't think he would have done one if he was sort of conscious and of his own mind. And I think that the fate that he gets is very difficult for me to accept, that he deserves it based on that act. And I think maybe missing that footage of her making the choice, and perhaps that extra footage, I think has maybe caused a bit of a misunderstanding perhaps with Ari Aster and Danny. And I think, you know, I do feel for sort of Christian in this. I think he is one note to an extent like his, jockey mate, but I think that what he kind of goes through, I think there's definitely a debate and discussion to be had there in these think pieces and reflections sort of the end. But that has to be taken from this as a white guy talking about a white guy here and all that sort of stuff. I should give that caveat.
I feel like
bros stick together, Holly.
I mean, he definitely deserves to be dumped, but I don't think he necessarily deserves to be burned.
Well, I was gonna say, like, I feel like a lot of times in horror films, you're like, oh, that person definitely deserves to die, and obviously, if it was real life, you would not think a person deserves to die for those actions. But I feel like the whole thing of Danny seeing him and perceiving what he's doing as cheating. Yeah, I don't think he was particularly involved in that as a thought process, but I think that was maybe them letting her see that was just the little thing she needed to push her over the edge, because he is a gaslighting, manipulative piece of shit to her for the entire film. He's, before they even get there, he is horrendous as a person. He should have just broken up with her when he wanted to, because that would have been, he's constantly trying to come off as the good guy and not look like an idiot, whereas if he'd just broken up with her, I mean, she would have hated him for a little while, but then that would have been it, and he just kept involved with her because he didn't want to just be this horrible person that dumped her, when really it would have been kinder. So I feel like me being happy that he got brutally murdered at the end was mainly based on everything else he sort of did before that, and then yeah, because obviously you kind of see that he's not really aware in the process of what's happening in that ritual, and I think just getting Danny to see it was what she needed to sort of let the grief out, as opposed to I think it just added on top of everything else, just pushed her over the edge when really it was a lot of the previous behaviour that made him a trash human.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think it could be any coincidence the fact that his name is Christian, and it's a Christian that's burned during the sort of pagan festival either. I think they're both sort of really good points, and I'd be interested to see. I, like a lot of you, sort of felt that this was a 2.5 hour long film, but it didn't feel like 2.5 hours, and I think I could have quite actually happily sat through an extra sort of 30 minutes of this film to see what else was being added in, if it was more sort of backstory about the festival and sort of previous sort of incarnations of it. But again, I liked, part of me likes the fact that there wasn't too much explained, and a lot left. I mean, that's what's so great about this ending here, is that everyone's sort of taking their different interpretations on it based on what they've seen, and also sort of bringing their own history to it. So I think it's really a sort of fascinating thing. And I think, at the end, I think, she definitely makes the decision herself. And, but again, the whole thing has been orchestrated to end that particular way. So, the Christian, he has been drugged, but I think he there also seems like a sense of inevitability about it. It's like he knows that this is going to happen. He doesn't maybe want to do it, but he knows that it is going to happen and stuff like that. And it's all sort of led up to that point, and I think it's just really well sort of executed, and just sort of the ending of it is just a fantastic piece of film making. And I think it's a fantastic film, and it's something that a lot of people are going to talk about, and it's not like we say, like the shock and the gore and stuff like that, but it's a film which has stayed with me for 2 or 3 weeks since. I'm always sort of thinking about certain moments about it, and I think that's the sign of a truly great horror film, is one that stays with you long after the credits roll. What do you think?
Yeah, I've always said it for me personally, is that the best horror for me is always when it's humans absolutely doing over other humans. It's not a supernatural thing. It's nothing to do with any sort of Wicca spells or whatever. Like in this thing, these people genuinely are just doing their sort of traditions, and it has crazy murderous things to do with it. And you're like, I can get on board with that. And there's always a creepy element of that. They're just doing it because they think it's right. It's their tradition. They're raised on it. And that's more creepy to me than sort of anything else. And I love that. And again, this film, I've been desperate to try and find the time to see it again. But I'm excited to, maybe we should discuss this again when it comes out on Blu-ray and DVD from Entertainment One, where they've got the extra half an hour footage, and sort of see how the two kind of come together, because I'm just desperate to see it again. And I think I've I think it's been a really exciting kind of release, and it's disappointing that it's maybe not done as well in America, but it seems to be doing quite well around the globe. And I think it's become something where, I don't know if it's me personally, in my timeline, or I'm in a sort of like an echo chamber, but it seems to be that, it was the counter programming release to Spider-Man, but more people seem to be talking about it online, memeing it, it being a thing to talk about and being online and going viral, and there's comedy videos this and memes that and parody trailers, that this is the small film up against the big Marvel Disney kind of juggernaut, but people seem to be talking about this more and it's making more of an impact, and that's kind of pleasing. But again, that could be me within my own echo chamber, but I think it's done really well.
Yeah, I think it's one of those films that I've just sort of been reading loads of stuff about it since it came out. Like, I feel like you're right. I think you need to go and see it like more than once. There's so much stuff that I think you would notice more on repeat viewings, or just stuff that would crop up that you missed the first time. So, I'd be really interested to watch it. I think, what you were saying at the beginning, Dallas, about not having like a lot of like gore and stuff, I kind of went into it like that as well. Like, I was really worried, because I'm not very good with gore. I was kind of worried that it was going to be too much, and I think it was actually fine. But I think it's going to stick with me purely for the sort of image of when her sister, like when they find her sister's body after she committed suicide. Like, they kind of use that image quite a few times throughout the film, and I mean, that's in like the first 10 minutes, and it is really disturbing. And I think like it clearly proves that he could have done a lot of, like, could have been like loads of gore and too much and over the top and stuff, but it was just just enough to make you a bit disturbed by it. But it's definitely one that I will watch a few times to try and get my head around it a bit more. It was really interesting, and I really liked how it was done. So it was amazing. I loved it.
Yeah, I know, and there's just so many sort of beautiful moments in it, but also sort of shocking moments in it. I love the person on Twitter who said that imagine waiting 72 years to jump off the cliff and then missing the rock. And it's like, yeah, it's so true. And we haven't even got onto the bear in a cage, which is apparently now sold out on A24 shop. A24, if you're listening and you want to get all three of us a bear in a cage, we'd love it. It's a bear. It's a bear. This is a disturbing horror film which has been marketed with this wonderful, toy of a bear in a cage. And the advert is a thing of beauty in itself. And I look forward to it. I mean, Lee, you were saying it was that you had like the Simpsons meme or something about, look at the bear. He's not done it. He's going to do something cool. He's going to do something cool. It's like, as soon as you see the bear, it's like, well, the bear's going to come back at the end. They've got to do something with the bear. And I thought the payoff was excellent on that. So yeah. So A24, 3 bears in a cage, please. So from Midsommar, which featured a very strong independent woman, we move on to our 52 films by women section of the thing, where we champion female directors and their films. And so, Lee, let's go to you first. What have you picked for us this week?
Yeah, I've gone for an upcoming film. I suppose this is serves a dual purpose. Touch wood, where I'm interviewing this director tomorrow for the A24 project, and that's director Patricia Roseman. And on Friday, her film Mouthpiece will be on at the Film House in Edinburgh as part of their Canada Now season. So, faced with the sudden death of her mother and wrestling with the daunting responsibility of delivering the eulogy, aspiring writer Cassandra finds solace and inspiration in her imagination and in her memory, which rapidly becomes indistinguishable. As the funeral service approaches, Cassandra's conflicted, complex reflections and own memories of her mother intensify and push her life in new and unexpected directions. So I have been lucky enough to watch this film already, and those who are going to go see it at the Film House on Friday are in for a real treat, and we'll be sure to share our interview with the director in a few weeks' time on the A24 project, unless she cancels tomorrow, and then this makes me look really silly.
Cool. And Kim, what have you got for us?
I thought, because I've recommended 2 Sofia Coppola films already, I might as well go for a third to make it a hat trick and go for Marie Antoinette, which came out in 2006, and it is the story of Marie Antoinette when she sort of meets her husband King Louis and their time at the Palace of Versailles and stuff, but without all the like getting your head chopped off at the end. And it's really it's just really beautiful to look at, and it's just really pretty, and it's such a like fun story. It's such a fun, cool take on like it's not, I watch a lot of like period dramas and stuff. It just feels like more fun, and it feels like a teen movie or something, and it's sort of telling this this story of like a French king and queen in like the 1700s. So, and it's just very nice to look at, and she sneaks things like into like Marie Antoinette's room. There's like a pair of pink Converse like under the bed and stuff. It's just a fun one to watch. So yeah, just to complete my Sofia Coppola love fest, I'll go for that.
Kim, have you ever seen The Beguiled?
I don't think so, no.
If you're looking for a Sofia Coppola film to perfectly complement Midsommar, if you want to see a period piece where all women all in white drug a man with mushrooms and send him on to his doom, I would highly recommend that movie if you're looking for something.
Nice, that sounds right up my street.
Also on Netflix.
Oh, amazing, right,
Netflix,
cool.
and yes, actually it does make a beautiful companion piece to Midsommar. Basically, it teaches men, don't be a dick. So yeah.
Excellent.
Don't shag around, don't eat mushrooms, and don't go away to sort of like a secluded location where people are all dressed in white.
Yeah, it's like it's
Awesome.
like a manual for the sort of Republicans at the moment. It's sort of the Me Too sort of don't be a single man left in a room in a house full of women. You need another man in the room just to make sure you don't get up to any nonsense. That's what you need. So my pick this week is a documentary which is currently on BBC iPlayer, and it's by Jeannie Finlay, who people may know recently, who did the excellent documentary about the end of the Game of Thrones series. And this is called The Great Hip Hop Hoax, and it's a documentary looking at a Californian hip hop duo, Syllable and Brains, who turned out to be two Scottish rappers from Dundee. And essentially, it's them looking back at the time where they were trying to make it as a rap duo, and they basically would phone up bars and clubs and record companies and basically say, we're two rappers, we would like to sort of perform for you. And they say, where are you from? They say Scotland, and they basically get hung up on. So they basically put on American accents and went down to this gig and got some studio interest. And instead of telling the truth, they sort of doubled down on it and basically said they were from America, and basically came up with this whole backstory. And it essentially led to them spending a couple of years in London trying to record an album and stuff like that, but basically having to keep up to the pretense that they were American, never dropping their accent, having this full, long, detailed backstory. And it's just like one of those can't believe it's true documentaries, but it's really funny, and it's a great watch, and that's on BBC iPlayer just now, so I recommend that one this week.
Yeah, great choice there. I've seen that one before.
Yeah.
Cracking film.
So that brings us to the end of this episode. So Kim, if people would like to talk about Midsommar and whether or not Danny chose the right option at the end, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter. I am at Wicked Sister. Oh, I can't even say it. At Wicked Sister 69. Yeah, if I am writing stuff, I will post it up on there. I've just done a piece about the women in Silence of the Lambs and their resilience against the trash men in that film as well. So it all ties nicely together.
Excellently. And if people would like to talk about bears in cages, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me still with that goddamn song stuck in my head on Twitter at Lee_Nostromo.
And you catch me on Twitter at ChampCelluloid. So we're off to draw straws to find out who puts on the bear costume, and while the rest of us dance around singing, "It's a bear! It's a bear!" We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Bear. It's a bear. It's a bear. It's a bear in a cage.
The official Midsommar Bear in a Cage. Now available on shop.a24films.com. Not compatible with other games, including Skin the Fool from A24.